My husband gave the successful restaurant business that I built from scratch to his unemployed sister. I filed a case of fraud against them and took it back. I never thought I'd be in a situation where I'd need to ask strangers on the internet for advice, but here I am. I'm a 34-year-old woman married to my husband, 36M, for 10 years. We have two beautiful children, aged 8 and 6. Our life seemed perfect until a few days ago when my world came crashing down. Last week, I decided to take a short girls' trip with my friends. It was just for 2 days, something I rarely do because I'm always busy with my restaurant and family. I left my husband in charge of the kids and my business, trusting him completely. I own and operate a successful Italian restaurant that I've built from scratch over the past 5 years. It's not just a business to me. It's my passion, my dream come true. When I returned home yesterday, I was excited to see my family and get back to work. But as soon as I walked through the door, I sensed something was wrong. My husband had this guilty look on his face, and the kids seemed upset and confused. I asked what was going on, and that's when he dropped the bombshell. He told me that while I was gone, he had transferred ownership of my restaurant to his sister. His sister is 39, a single mom who's been unemployed for a while. According to my husband, she needed it more than we did. I stood there, trying to process what he was saying, feeling like I was in some kind of twisted nightmare. I asked him how he could possibly think he had the right to give away my business. He stammered through an explanation about it being a family decision and how his sister was struggling financially. I was livid. This wasn't just some object he could give away. It was my livelihood, my passion, something I had poured my heart and soul into for years. When I demanded to know how he had managed to do this legally, he admitted that he had forged my signature on some documents. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Not only had he given away my business, but he had committed fraud to do it. The betrayal cut deep, leaving me feeling hollow and lost. I immediately called my sister-in-law. When she answered, she had the audacity to thank me for my generosity. I was shocked. I told her that I had no idea about this arrangement and that the business was not hers to take. She got defensive, saying her brother had assured her it was all above board and that I had agreed to it. I hung up, my hands shaking with anger and disbelief. I confronted my husband again. He tried to justify his actions, saying that his sister was struggling as a single mom and that we were financially stable enough to share the wealth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was my business, not some charity to be handed out on a whim. I had worked tirelessly for years to make it successful, often sacrificing time with my family to ensure its growth. Our argument escalated, with the kids watching wide-eyed and confused. I tried to keep my voice down for their sake, but I was shaking with anger. I told my husband that what he had done was unforgivable. He had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, going behind my back to give away something that was solely mine. I called my lawyer right then and there, explaining the situation through tears of frustration. He advised me that we would need to take immediate legal action to try and reverse what had been done. I also called the restaurant and spoke to my manager, telling her not to let my sister-in-law take over anything until we sorted this out legally. Throughout the evening, my husband kept trying to talk to me, to explain his reasoning, but I couldn't even look at him. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. The business I had worked so hard to build, the one that had seen me through late nights and early mornings, through stress and triumph, had been taken from me by the person I trusted most. As the night progressed, things got even more heated. My husband's phone kept ringing. It was his sister, demanding to know what was going on. He tried to talk to her in private, but I insisted on hearing everything. She was yelling about how she had already told her kids about their new life, how she had plans to change the restaurant. Each word felt like a knife in my heart. I couldn't take it anymore. The weight of the betrayal, the anger, and the fear of losing everything I had worked for became too much. I told my husband he needed to leave. I couldn't stand to be in the same house as him right now. He protested, saying he had nowhere to go, but I didn't care. I told him to go to his sister's place since they seemed to be so close. He tried to argue, saying he had the right to stay in our home. I reminded him that the house was in my name. I had bought it with the money from my restaurant. This seemed to finally sink in for him, the reality of what he had done. He packed a bag and left, the kids crying as they watched him go. Now, I'm sitting here in my quiet house, my children finally asleep, trying to process everything that's happened. The silence is deafening, filled with the echoes of our argument and the uncertainty of what's to come. I can't help but wonder if I overreacted. Should I have tried to talk it out more? But every time I think about giving him another chance to explain, I remember what he did and the anger comes rushing back. I know I have a legal battle ahead of me to reclaim my business. I'm prepared to fight with everything I have. But I'm also left wondering about my marriage. Can I ever trust my husband again after this? Should I even try? The thought of reconciliation seems impossible right now, but the thought of breaking up our family breaks my heart. I keep replaying the moment he told me what he'd done, trying to understand how he could do this to me. Didn't he realize how much the restaurant meant to me? Didn't he see all the hard work I put into it? I feel like he's stolen a piece of my identity, not just a business. The kids are another concern. They're too young to fully understand what's happening, but they know something is terribly wrong. How do I explain to them why Daddy isn't here? How do I protect them from the fallout of this mess? I'm also worried about the restaurant itself. What if my sister-in-law has already started making changes? What if she's fired staff or altered menus? The thought of my carefully crafted business being dismantled in my absence is almost too much to bear. As I sit here, surrounded by family photos and memories of happier times, I can't help but feel lost. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my family has been turned upside down in the span of a day. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I'm scared about what the future holds. So, Reddit, I turn to you in my hour of need. Am I the asshole for kicking my husband out after he gave my restaurant to his sister? Am I overreacting, or is this betrayal as monumental as it feels? Any advice or perspective would be greatly appreciated as I navigate this difficult time. Update 1. It's been a few weeks since my original post, and I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. The outpouring of kindness from strangers on the internet has been a bright spot in what has otherwise been a dark and difficult time. I thought I'd give an update and share some backstory that might provide more context to the situation. Let me take you back to the beginning of my restaurant journey. 5 years ago, I was working as a sous chef at a local Italian restaurant. I loved my job, but I always dreamed of owning my own place. I had ideas for dishes, for the ambiance, for everything. I'd spend my free time sketching restaurant layouts and writing menu ideas in notebooks. Whenever I shared these dreams with my husband, he'd just nod and change the subject. At the time, I chalked it up to him being practical, but now I see it was a lack of support. One day, I saw a small, rundown diner for sale in our town. It was in a great location, and despite its current state, I could see its potential. The moment I laid eyes on it, I knew this was my chance. I excitedly told my husband about it, but his response was lukewarm at best. He said things like, "Restaurants are risky," and "maybe you should stick with your steady job." It hurt, but it didn't deter me. I saw this as my one shot at making my dreams come true. I decided to go for it anyway, against my husband's advice. I used all of my savings and took out a substantial loan to buy the place. The first few months were incredibly tough. I was working around the clock, trying to renovate the space while also developing my menu and hiring staff. There were nights I slept on a cot in the back office because I was too tired to drive home. My husband's support during this time was minimal. He'd complain about me not being home enough, about the financial strain, about the risk we were taking. There were times I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I had made a huge mistake. What hurt even more was my sister-in-law's attitude. She'd come around sometimes, ostensibly to help, but mostly she'd just criticize. She'd say things like, "This place is never going to work," or "You're in over your head." I tried to brush it off, but it stung. Here I was, pouring my heart and soul into this place, and my own family couldn't see its potential. Despite the lack of support, I persevered. I poured everything I had into that restaurant. I worked 16-hour days, barely seeing my kids. I missed family events, birthdays, everything. I felt guilty about it, but I kept telling myself it would all be worth it in the end. I learned every aspect of the business, from cooking to accounting to staff management. There were times I wanted to give up, but the thought of failing, of proving my husband and sister-in-law right, kept me going. Slowly, things started to turn around. Word began to spread about our authentic Italian cuisine. People loved the cozy atmosphere I'd created, with its warm lighting and rustic decor. We started getting write-ups in local papers. Food critics praised our homemade pasta and traditional recipes. Reservations became harder to get. Before I knew it, we were turning a profit. As the restaurant became successful, my husband's attitude changed. Suddenly, he was bragging to his friends about our restaurant. He started showing up more, acting like he'd been supportive all along. His sister, too, became more interested. She'd bring her kids in for free meals, talking about how proud she was of her family business. I tried to let go of the resentment I felt. I told myself that at least they were supportive now. But deep down, it bothered me. Where were they when I was struggling? When I was questioning everything? When I needed their support? The most? Looking back, I can see the signs that led to the current situation. My husband and his sister would have hushed conversations that would stop when I entered the room. They'd make comments about how lucky we were, how we should share the wealth. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now it all makes sense. In the weeks since my last post, I've learned more about what led to my husband's decision. Apparently, his sister had been pressuring him for months. She'd cry about her financial struggles, about how hard it was to be a single mom. She'd guilt him by saying things like, "We're family, we're supposed to help each other." She'd point out how successful the restaurant had become and how it could solve all her problems. My husband, instead of talking to me about it, decided to take matters into his own hands. He got the idea to transfer the restaurant to his sister when I mentioned my upcoming girls' trip. He saw it as an opportunity to solve everyone's problems without having to face me directly. He convinced himself that I would eventually understand and agree with his decision. The level of betrayal I feel is hard to describe, not just from my husband, but from his sister too. She knew very well that I hadn't agreed to this. She knew how hard I'd worked. Yet she was willing to take it all, just like that. It makes me question every interaction we've ever had, every family dinner, every holiday gathering. Was she always just waiting for an opportunity to take what was mine? I've been staying with a friend for the past week, trying to clear my head. My husband has been blowing up my phone, alternating between apologies and justifications. One minute he's begging for forgiveness, the next he's telling me I'm overreacting. His sister has been doing the same, sometimes pleading, sometimes threatening legal action. It's emotionally exhausting. My lawyer has assured me that we have a strong case to reclaim the restaurant. The forged signatures alone are grounds for fraud, but it's going to be a long, messy process. We're gathering evidence, preparing for depositions, and getting ready for what could be a drawn-out legal battle. The thought of fighting my own family in court makes me sick to my stomach, but I know I have to do it. This is my livelihood, my dream, and I'm not going to let it go without a fight. As for my marriage, I honestly don't know what the future holds. The trust is completely shattered. Even if we get past this legally, I don't know if I can ever look at my husband the same way again. How can I trust someone who is willing to go behind my back and give away everything I've worked for? We've started marriage counseling, but it feels like too little, too late. I'm trying to stay strong for my kids. They don't fully understand what's happening, but they know something is wrong. They miss their dad, and it breaks my heart to see them confused and upset. I'm doing my best to shield them from the worst of it, but I know this situation is affecting them. The restaurant itself is in a state of limbo. I've managed to put a temporary halt on any changes my sister-in-law was planning to make, but the staff is unsettled. I'm doing my best to reassure them, to keep things running smoothly despite the chaos in my personal life. It's hard to be the leader they need when I'm feeling so broken myself. There are moments when I feel strong, ready to fight for what's mine. Other times I feel completely overwhelmed, wondering how my life turned upside down so quickly. But I'm trying to take it one day at a time, focusing on what I can control. Thank you again for all your support. It means more than you know to have people in my corner, even if they're strangers on the internet. I'll update again when there are new developments. For now, I'm trying to stay focused on the legal battle ahead and on being there for my children during this difficult time. Update 2. It's been several months since my last update, and I wanted to wait until things were more settled before posting again. So much has happened, and I'm still processing it all, but I feel like I'm finally coming out on the other side of this nightmare. First, the good news. After a long and stressful legal battle, I've won back ownership of my restaurant. The court ruled in my favor, citing the fraudulent actions taken by my husband and sister-in-law. It was a grueling process, with countless depositions, mountains of paperwork, and numerous court appearances. There were times when I felt like giving up, when the stress seemed too much to bear. But the thought of losing everything I'd worked for kept me going. During the trial, some shocking details came to light. It turned out that my sister-in-law had been planning this for months. She had convinced my husband that I was neglecting the family because of the restaurant, and that she could run it better while allowing me to focus on being a mom. She had even drafted a business plan for how she would change the restaurant, turning my authentic Italian eatery into a fast food pizza joint. The thought of my carefully crafted menu and atmosphere being destroyed like that still makes me sick. The judge was particularly unimpressed by the forged documents and the deliberate timing of the transfer while I was away. In the end, not only was the ownership returned to me, but my sister-in-law was ordered to pay damages for the disruption to the business. It felt like vindication after months of stress and uncertainty. Reclaiming the restaurant was a bittersweet victory. While I was overjoyed to have my business back, the whole ordeal had taken a toll. Some of my staff had left during the uncertainty, and I had to work hard to rebuild the team and reassure our regular customers. It's been challenging, but also rewarding to see the restaurant coming back to life under my care. As for my personal life, things have been difficult, but I feel like I'm finally moving in the right direction. After much soul-searching and several attempts at counseling, I decided to file for divorce. The betrayal was just too deep, the trust too broken to repair. It wasn't an easy decision, especially considering our children, but I knew it was the right one for me and for my long-term happiness. The divorce proceedings were almost as grueling as the business lawsuit. My soon-to-be ex-husband tried to claim that he deserved a portion of the restaurant's value since we were married when I started it. He argued that his support during the early days entitled him to a share. Thankfully, my lawyer was able to argue successfully that his lack of involvement and recent actions nullified any such claim. The judge agreed, and the restaurant remained solely in my name. My relationship with my sister-in-law is, understandably, beyond repair. She still maintains that she was just trying to help the family, but I can't forgive the underhanded way she went about it. I've had to get a restraining order to keep her away from the restaurant after she made several scenes, trying to convince customers that she was the rightful owner. It's sad that it had to come to this, but I need to protect what's mine. The hardest part of all of this has been explaining everything to my children. They're still young and don't fully understand why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, or why they can't see their aunt. I'm doing my best to be honest with them in an age-appropriate way, emphasizing that sometimes adults make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we stop loving each other. It's been a delicate balance, trying to help them understand without burdening them with adult problems. On a more positive note, the restaurant is doing well again. After a few months of uncertainty, our regulars have returned and we're even attracting new customers. I've introduced some new dishes to the menu, including a few that I developed during the stressful months of the legal battle. Stress cooking is real, folks. It's been therapeutic to pour my energy back into the kitchen, to create and innovate again. I've also taken steps to legally protect the business from any future attempts at takeover. My lawyer helped me set up a trust and ironclad contracts for any future business partners or managers. It's sad that I have to think this way now, but I'm determined to never let anyone take advantage of me or my business again. Looking back, I can see how this whole situation has made me stronger. I've learned valuable lessons about trust, about standing up for myself, and about the importance of legal protection for small business owners. While I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, I'm proud of how I've come through it. I've also learned the importance of building a support network outside of family. My staff, my regular customers, and even some of the other local business owners have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal. Their encouragement and understanding have meant the world to me. To everyone who offered support and advice throughout this ordeal, thank you. Your words helped me more than you know during some of my darkest moments. There were days when your comments were the only thing that kept me going, reminding me that I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed and that I deserved better. As for what's next, I'm focusing on being the best mom I can be, running my restaurant and learning to trust again, in that order. It's a new chapter in my life, and while it's not what I expected, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that I had neglected during my marriage, and it's exciting to think about the possibilities ahead. I'm also considering ways to use my experience to help other small business owners, particularly women, protect themselves and their dreams. Maybe someday I'll write a book or start a support group. For now, though, I'm taking things one day at a time. The road ahead isn't going to be easy. I know there will be challenges as I navigate single parenthood and continue to rebuild my business. But for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. I'm no longer living in fear of what my husband or sister-in-law might do next. I'm in control of my life and my business, and that feels incredibly empowering. So, to anyone out there facing a similar situation, whether it's betrayal from a loved one or a fight for your business, know that there's hope. It might be a long, hard battle, but you're stronger than you know. Trust your instincts, seek help when you need it, and never give up on your dreams.